Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Tom Rivera, and I retired as the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Studies. And today we are at the Fowle Library, room 4005, and our guest this afternoon, who's added to our oral history project of South Colton, is Miss Terry Constance. And Terry, welcome, and thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.
My pleasure.
We
Thank
truly
you.
appreciate it. And also, part of our committee is Mr. Henry Vasquez. And again, Henry, thanks for undertaking this project with us. As you know, we've been planning this for over a year now, and it's finally coming to a fruition. And the other part of the member that's part of our team is Mr. Frank Acosta, also retired like Henry. And Frank is doing the video taping of our interview this afternoon. So again, Terry, welcome to the session. And what I'd like to do, Terry, is just talk about your dad, because your dad was quite a person in South Colton. He contributed tremendously to many projects in South Colton. He influenced many people in South Colton, and he was one of the people that made things work in South Colton. So could you tell us a little bit about your dad? Where was he born?
Well, let me start out by saying that as a family, we didn't know very much about what my dad did outside the home. So fortunately, when he passed, he left some paperwork among his papers, which, he didn't really have an office at the home, but he did collect certain things, and he kept them over the years. And in that way, I began to understand what it was that he did and what he was involved in. So my knowledge of him working outside the home or being involved in the community comes primarily from the paperwork that I read. So what I did was I composed a sort of a small family history, plus going into some detail as to what he was actually involved in outside the community, as far as I could tell from the paperwork.
Yes.
So probably what I would like to do is start out with a little bit of the family history.
Please.
And tell you where I think we came from. And in talking to my Aunt Mary, more than anyone else, she was able to give me little snippets of where they came from. And my recollection is that they came from the Jalisco area of Mexico. They originally came, I imagine, through Arizona, by route of Arizona, into California. And it was sort of like a family migration, because it was his grandfather, I think, and his parents, and aunts and uncles on the Delgado side of the family that came to both Colton and to East Highlands, which most of the families, we are related to many of the families in East Highlands, and we also have family in San Bernardino, which are actually the sons and daughters of the original settlers of the East Highlands. And they primarily came looking for work. And the area that they first worked in was in the citrus workers in the orange groves, picking the oranges and working that way. And I'm sure you are aware of the fact that it's very backbreaking work. And over the years, my dad suffered from a lot of extreme back pain as a result of that. And they also went to the fields out like in Fresno and Central California. But in any case, my dad was born in Colton in the family home on N Street. And I believe that several of his sisters and his brothers were also born in Colton. I don't know that anybody ever went to the hospital at that time.
How many brothers and sisters did he have?
Well, let me check, because I had to write everything down, because I can't
so
depend
I
on
threw
my
you
memory.
off script. Huh?
Well, no, I tried to follow your script, and I think I did pretty good. Anyway, what I found was a little book that it was kind of like a sort of a diary, and it wasn't very long, but it did document where my grandfather how old he was when he died and how old people were when they passed away. And so there was the original, my grandfather or great-grandfather, it was a memorial to him. His name was Julio Padilla, and he died in May of 1890. And then there was Simona Padilla, who died in 1888. She was 18 years old. And there was Victoriano Delgado, who died in 1929, more or less. But my dad's father, who was Julio Padilla, he was born in 1872. He got married when he was 25, and he died in 1897. No, 1914 actually. My dad's mother, who was Isiquia Delgado Padilla, was born in November 1876, and she passed in 1925 in Colton. There was 3 brothers, Francisco and Nicolas, well, including my dad, Manuel. And there was 5 sisters, who were Maria, Gertrudis, Carmen, Ramona, and Maria del Refugio Padilla. And that was the extent of the brothers and sisters. Buried in the Agua Mansa Cemetery, which is the original cemetery in Colton.
Your grandparents were buried in the Agua Mansa?
Yes. Victoriano Delgado was buried there. That was the father of Isiquia. Julio Padilla, who is the father, Isiquia, the mother, and then 2 daughters, Carmen and Ramona.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's basically what I took from reading the little diary. Your next question was, tell me about your dad. His school experience, he graduated from Colton High School, and he went to Valley College.
What year did you graduate from Colton High School?
It doesn't say. It didn't say. I could backtrack, but
Mm-hmm.
it takes a little extra work. His work experiences were as a citrus worker, picking the oranges. He worked for Portland Cement Company. He was a manager of the Colton projects for San Bernardino County. He was a union laborer. He joined the union at one point, and he worked for Kennedy Pipe Company in Barstow, in Yermo. And then in August of 1959, he was elected financial secretary-treasurer for Hod Carriers and Laborers Local 783.
Here in San Bernardino?
Yeah, until his retirement. His community involvement, from what I could gather from the papers that I read, involved, he was a member of the Congress of Community Clubs, and I'm sure people have mentioned that to you. Have they?
They have, but what do you know about the Congress?
What I know about the Congress, and it was taken from a letterhead that I found, and he actually created the logo for the letterhead. So it included the Latin American Civic Club, the American Legion Fidel Hernandez Post 754, the Mercury Athletic and Social Club, the Latin American Democratic Club, the Woodrow Wilson PTA, and the Scoutmasters Boy Scout Troop 45. And the youth groups included Conquistadores
Right.
Youth Club, Los Solteros Youth Club, which was a boys' club, Las Solteras Youth Club, girls' club, and the Latin Teen Drill Team. And he actually prepared the constitutions for each of those organizations, and he included objectives for the various youth groups. He also prepared the constitution for Los Latinos Social Club in Redlands in 1965, and the San Bernardino County Civic Association in 1965, which was a political organization. And then he also, there was a youth club in Tucson, Arizona, called the Empress Youth Club. And the Congress of Community Clubs was the sponsoring organization for that group. And then there was the People's Committee, which was created in 1976 in Colton to support political candidates. And as far as I know, I'm sure there was other organizations, but I'm just aware of these because that's what the paperwork showed me. In terms of his political involvement, I'm not that knowledgeable about his political involvement, but what I do know is that he was involved in helping various people in their aspirations for political office. I couldn't name them for you, but I know that he was involved in the efforts to have Pete Lukey Sr. To be a candidate for the mayor of Colton. And as you know, that kind of went down the drain 2 or 3 days before the election because of a rumor that was presented to the newspapers that said that he really wasn't a citizen. So that was very disappointing for a lot of people. But at the same time, my dad helped Mr. Lukey prepare speeches for to be presented to the city council regarding various issues that were of concern to the people of South Colton. And one of the big ones was that apparently there was continued delays in the construction of the underpass for the railroad on what is now La Cadena. And so he was very vocal about that, and my dad helped him vocalize those things, as well as the delays that they had for the what they called the community center at Veterans Memorial Park.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently there had been a lot of vandalism because the work was so slow in getting done, so that he helped him prepare a statement, demanding to know why there had been such delays. I also know that he was involved in organizing support for Ruben Ayala,
Mm-hmm.
for I believe was senator in California.
Yes, Ruben Ayala from Chino.
Yes, and I know that, but I don't know anything about what process he went through in order to help him.
Right. Ruben was on the Board of Supervisors for San Bernardino County. And then after that, he had aspirations to be a senator for California. And your dad was instrumental in helping him in his campaign in the Colton area.
One of the reasons I know that he was involved with him was because my son James went to Our Lady of Guadalupe School in San Bernardino, and the nuns organized a field trip to Sacramento. And as they were touring the capital, apparently Senator Ayala came out of his office and asked for James. And he said, "I know your grandfather," and they talked a little bit, but I guess that James was a little bit surprised at
But that was a wonderful experience
Oh, yeah.
for him. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
It made going to Sacramento a memorable memory.
Oh yeah, and he always he talks about that every once in a while when we start talking about what we call
Grandpa.
the old days. Yeah.
Now, did James call him Grandpa or?
Yes, he did. When James was born, we lived in my parents' home for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and then over the years, in going to school in San Bernardino, there was a lot of connection with my dad at my dad's home, and so he got to know his grandchildren, not real well, but especially the boys, who was James and Louis Rodriguez. He used to take them with him when he went visiting the bars, and he would introduce them to whoever he knew, and he would say, "Okay, this is a good guy, that's a bad guy." And so James was telling me, I wish I could have remembered the names, but of course, he was too young to realize what was happening.
In the house that your dad lived in, is that the original house that he was born and raised in?
Yes, it was the neighborhood was very consistent. It just stayed the same while I was growing up. So it was his home, the house he was born in.
And that was on N Street.
Yes,
On N Street.
and there was my grandmother and grandfather's house on my mom's side. Then there was our home, which is the home that he built, with help. And then the Contreras, the Beltrans were down the block, the Serranos, the Pimentels. We all grew up together. And the N Street was our playground. And for us, as his children, we were limited in how far we could go or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we got to develop relationships.
Well, you were around the corner from 7th and 6th Street. you know, 7th, and you were in the middle there on N Street.
Yes.
And around the corner was La Calle Siete. And the Calle Siete was a Broadway of South Colton.
Yes, it was. And I heard some stories, and not really stories, but a little bit of history where South Colton was a place all its own. It had its own theater, it had its own markets, it had its own entertainment areas, movie houses. So it was very protected in that regard.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, going outside of that area probably was, I wouldn't say not allowed, but people were restricted because of, you know, discrimination. And because it was felt in the schools and it was felt in other places as well. So it was a community within a community.
Yeah, and all the happenings, like your cousin Eddie Castorena says, all the happenings happened there on La Calle Siete, and then
Yes.
down the street from you was a church, which
Yes.
was also quite close.
Right, yes. So it was, I imagine it was quite a hopping place, especially during the war. So,
During World War II.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. I know that my dad was involved in the Fiestas Patrias. He was in the organizing committee for many years, and at one point served as president. And he used to write the minutes for the meetings that they used to have. And this when the fiestas took place on the corner of 8th and N Streets, which is now La Cadena.
Yeah, which is down the street from your house.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so it was a happening place, you know, with the parades taking place every year going in front of the house. And I was involved in many of the royal courts, supposedly. You know, they would plot me in and get me dressed up and sit me there.
Did you give any speeches?
Actually, I did.
Tell us about that
in my teen
experience.
years. Verde Blanco Colorado, right? And you talk about the I can't remember. Anyway, it was a group, and it was initially the Girl Scouts group that we had there in Colton. You know, it was Sylvia Castorena, Mary Lou Vasquez, many of the girls. You know, I can't remember all the names. Mary Lou Castro, I think I mentioned her already. And there was about a group of about 10 or 11 girls. And my Aunt Tula used to bring us all together, and she would teach us the poems for the 15th and 16th, and also the dances.
You know, I didn't know we had a Girl Scout troop in South Colton.
Oh yeah, the leaders.
Tell me about that.
The leaders were Maya Cuca, Refugio, Esther Castorena, and I think Esther Beltran was involved for a short while. And it was for a few years, and they documented, you know, who went, who came, who was involved. You know, we went on little field trips and things like that. And it was a good time. And it was.
Can you remember any of the members that were part of the group?
Yeah, the names that I just mentioned. And I actually have a list of all the names, but I didn't bring it with me. But I do have all the names of the girls that were.
Give me some names again. I'm an old guy, so I don't remember things.
Mary Lou Castro, Sylvia Castorena, Emily Rodriguez, I think one of her cousins, Stella Ochoa, Henrietta Lopez. Well, that's 6 people already, so that's more than half.
Well, most of them were in my class.
Oh, they were?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, I knew you from the gas station.
Oh, that's right. I used to work at Henry's gas station,
Yes.
which is also a couple of blocks from your house.
Yes.
Yeah, and your dad gassed up at our gas
Yeah.
station.
I used to gas up there too because I thought you were cute.
Oh.
But you know who also worked there was Tony Bustos.
Tony Bustos. Was
I
he
had
a cousin of yours?
I had a crush on him. Well, you know, talking about cousins, my mom used to watch very carefully who we went out with because she wouldn't let us go out with anybody that she thought was related to us. And there was a few times. Even my sister Clara started going out with Junior Chavez, who was the son of one of my mom's cousins on my mother's side. And they lived across the track, so, you know, Clara and Carol were a little bit more involved with some of the people, some of the kids from South Colton. But they found out very quickly who they could go out with and who they couldn't.
Well, your mom kept a visual eye on them, so
Oh, yeah,
that was
all the
pretty
time.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did. She was.
And Tula, your Aunt Tula, she was
Oh, yeah.
very much involved with the Fiestas Patrias.
Oh, yes.
Was that because of your dad's influence or because she strongly believed in the program?
Well, I think they both believed in the program. One of the things that I learned was that, and I'm going a little bit off of my little thing here, but when the war started, World War II, a lot of the young men from South Colton went to war. And while they were there, they found out that they were actually Americans. They didn't realize that they were American. They thought they were just Mexican.
Mexicans,
Yes.
yes. Uh-huh.
And so it was enlightening for them that they could also celebrate July 4th with pride.
Mhm.
So when they came back from the war, after the war ended, they started celebrating Las Fiestas Patrias, and that's the notes that I was reading. So I'm not sure who initially started it or why. I just know that they were very much involved in that celebration. And the effect of because my tias, Cuca and Tula, and also my aunts on my mother's side, Ramona and Rosa, they used to go to the dances that were offered by the USO in Riverside at March Field and other places. And so they loved to dance and they loved music. So they were beginning to integrate into what you would call the white community. But as the men came back and started realizing that they had rights, things started to change. And one of the things that most impressed my aunts was the fact that they are American. They were American, not just Mexican American. Well, not even Mexican American wasn't a term that was used at that time. But I don't know how it happened, but my aunts, Maria, Tula, and Cuca, I don't know if they got together. I know they talked about it, and they decided that they needed to be as American as they possibly could. So they went and they officially and formally changed their names from Maria to Mary, from Gertrudis to Gertrude, and my Aunt Cuca's Refugio to Ruth. So they got their birth certificates changed. It was an official name change.
And what year was that, Terry?
Well, it was after the war.
So in the 40s?
In the 40s, yeah. I don't know if it was the mid-40s.
Uh-huh.
Could have been the mid-40s. And they did, and I, I heard it and I went, wow,
And the attitude that they got after the war, which was to be as American as possible.
Exactly.
Was it a trend in the community to do something like that, or were they avant-garde kind of females that thought that was the thing to do?
I don't know if that was a thing that they did in the community. I've never heard anybody else mention that. But I think what they wanted to do was be recognized as Americans as much as possible. And in thinking about it now, I think too that that's one of the reasons that we went to school where we went, because we went to what you would consider a private school, which was, a Catholic school. And my brother and I went, and my sisters. And then when Immaculate Conception School was created, Clara and Carol went there, and then they transferred over to St. Bernardine, for the rest of their education. But I really never knew why. And I think now that I'm reflecting on the name change and things like that, I think possibly that was their effort to integrate us into.
Yeah, because, some of the things that I've read mention that because of the war, that our girls from the community had a chance to leave home and get a job outside the home, and then having a job, they were considered themselves a little more independent, and they were earning money, so they could purchase things that they couldn't before. So it gave them that sense of independence. And then we read about Rosie the Riveter. And we had a lot of our girls also work at North Air Force Base during the war. So that's why I was curious about
Yeah.
your aunts.
My Aunt Ramona on my mom's side, she was the one that was she was very outgoing. And she went to Long Beach and she worked in the aircraft. I think it was Lockheed at the time. And she was a riveter. She worked on the planes. But my Aunt Rosa followed her, Bidi Lujan or Pimentel followed her, and they were out there earning money and creating a life for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, and
No,
with
you
pride.
know, your Aunt Dula and your Aunt Maria, they stand out in my history because they were always involved with the Fiestas Patrias. And you mentioned the Fiestas Patrias where they taught people that participated the songs, the
Right.
poems, the history of the importance of Fiestas Patrias.
Right.
And they did that for many years.
Yes, they did.
They did that for many years. And the other thing is that, were they also very involved in the church in Colton?
I would say yes. I laugh because yes, they were very much involved. My Aunt Mary was, she was I think she was the oldest one. I got to read the dates. Anyway, she was very much involved. She loved gardening, and so for her, her ministry was the flowers for the church, but also she also took care of the vestments and the altar cloths, and even made altar cloths, and the little cloths that went over the ciborium after Mass. She loved doing it, and I have some of those things that I happened to gather after she died. And she was very proud of her work in that regard. And Dula, she was involved mostly in the Fiestas Patrias. She was involved in church. She was very, what would we say, proactive, or she knew what she wanted to do and how to do it. And I think people realized that. Her and Father Valencia always used to come to, they didn't agree on everything.
She was an assertive
You know
little
that too.
kid.
I do, yeah. My mom was a good friend of Dula's and would talk about how she was very strong, and so
Yeah.
that, and Father Valencia was very strong, so
Right.
it was very easy to disagree with him.
Yeah, and of course he had the louder voice, being, male. But in any case, she never backed down from him, never. And, she knew what was right, and if she couldn't get it the nice way, she insisted on it,
Uh-huh.
and that was who she was.
Yeah.
She went to Mexico quite often, because I think she probably visited relatives and things like that. And she always made it a point to make friends with the priests and the bishops over there. I don't know how she did it, but she did, and sometimes they would come and visit the family home.
Uh-huh.
So I knew she was well known when she went over there to visit.
I remember my mom was visiting with her one time, and I went along, and she was just so proud of everything, just of the family, of everything in Mexico, and she would tell us que no hay ningún cielo tan bonito como el de Mexico and stuff like that. I mean, such pride.
She was very proud.
Yeah, and then my mom talked about. Well, actually, I got to see a little bit of the children, reciting at the Fiestas Patrias when they were right there on La Cadena or 8th and N Street, before that was taken away, and that was very beautiful.
And the stage was always set up with all the important people on the
Yeah.
background, and then the Queen and everything. It was quite, what do you call it?
It was very beautiful because
Yeah.
even the lighting, the electric bulbs that people used to hang for the lighting, I know that this kind of lighting is more efficient and everything, but it doesn't seem as pretty at night. Those old incandescent light bulbs that hung over the fiestas just
Right.
made everything look good, and the girls wearing their china poblana with all the sparkly,
Red, white, and green.
Yes.
Yeah,
the sparkly colors. It was so beautiful.
And I think all the dresses were handmade at that time.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Fiestas Patrias was what, Henry, a celebration of independence from
Spain.
From
From
Spain.
Spain?
Mhm.
1810?
1810 to 1821.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the big celebration for our community. The Cinco de Mayo celebration, I think a lot of people believe came into being simply because it was during the school year,
Mhm.
and the Fiestas Patrias were just before school started.
In the Fiestas Patrias, you mentioned the stage and the girls
Mhm.
that were selected as a queen
As
and a
queen.
princess.
Mhm.
How did that happen?
I think it was primarily fundraising. I have no idea other than that, because
Mhm.
they were always selling tickets.
So whoever sold the most ticket
Mhm.
became the queen of the
La fiesta.
La Fiesta.
Mhm.
La Fiesta.
Yeah. Just the way San Salvador has their annual fiesta, they ask the girls to run for queen, and whoever sells the most tickets is
Mhm. Mhm.
selected queen.
And then they,
And I
they
think
also
that's what-
they also had a parade, didn't they?
Oh, yes, they had a parade that started, I think it started downtown, didn't it?
It started
Yeah,
downtown.
at Fleming Park.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it went south.
It went south, and then it went up N Street, and then over on Fifth Street, was it Fifth Street? And then it came around, and then back to the Fiesta grounds.
Mhm, mhm.
And
And
the-
did they also have a dance?
If they did, I don't know.
They have a
I
dance
imagine.
in?
I think they did over on the street side.
Yes.
Yeah, they
yeah,
did, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the activity was what, 1, 2, 3 days?
It was the 2 days.
A 2-day
With a
activity?
grito on the night of the 15th to the
Mhm.
16th.
Okay, that's September 15 and 16.
Mhm.
Okay.
And there was, the proclamation was read at that time, and then the grito.
Mhm.
And usually the council from Mexico attended, the mayor of Colton, and sometimes the mayor of San Bernardino. But there was a lot of dignitaries that were invited to participate.
And were the Progresistas a sponsor of the activity? The Progresista group?
I don't think so. I have that somewhere in my notes.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember the Progresistas being mentioned. I think it was the Congress that was primarily.
Congress of Community Clubs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Congress of
Yeah.
Community Clubs.
Mhm.
Yeah. Also, Terry, your dad was quite a musician. He played the guitar.
Well, yeah, he played the guitar and he played the piano,
Uh-huh.
and he played by ear. And he prided himself in being able to play all the songs of the day, and he would do that. And the guitar was his constant companion wherever he went. And I think people enjoyed his music quite a
Mhm.
bit. And he
Mhm.
sang too. So
Did he sing boleros or?
he sang anything that he knew
Uh-huh.
or anything that was popular.
Uh-huh.
He would study, or not study, but learn the music and
Mhm.
how to play the various changes in the guitar.
Mhm.
He would
Mhm.
do that. I don't think I ever heard him play any length of time. I just heard that that's what he did.
Yeah, yeah. And then I would imagine that the family also are musicians because you're a musician. You play the piano, and you actively involved in the church choir. Would you tell us about your activities as far as music and volunteering in the church as a music director or being part of the choir?
Well, being a church musician is a calling. It's not anything that I ever pursued or wanted to do. And I think you understand that,
Yeah.
what the calling is. And I started learning how to play the piano when I was 5. And my teacher was my tia Cuca. She taught me solfeo. And so that transitioning from Spanish to English musically was hard for me because the scales don't start the same way. ABCs, you start CB, whatever.
Mhm.
Anyway, I was taught by Mrs. Engel. Their family was a family of doctors in Colton. I'm not sure how my mom found them, but anyway, I started taking lessons from her, and I took lessons for about I'd say 5 years. And then when I went into junior high, I didn't want to take them anymore. So I stopped taking them. But it was the basis of what I know. And that's as far as formally as I got in my musical education. And I didn't really start getting involved again in the church, because when I graduated from high school, I moved out of the house and when, I did my thing. But then after I got married and I was in my 30s, we went back to Colton to live in the area. And at that time, I also started working for the church as a secretary. And then the people that were involved very much in the church wanted to have a choir, start a choir. And it was primarily Danny Carrasco's wife. What was her name? Do you remember? Cecilia. Yeah. She approached me and said, "You know how to read music, so you're going to lead the choir." So I said, "Okay." If I had known, I would have said, "Why don't you ask Henry?" or one of his brothers or cousins or whatever. But I didn't know any. I didn't know at that time. But anyway, I said, "Well, okay." So that started for me an education in how to build a group, how to be nice to people, and not, because when you don't know how to do something and people expect certain things out of you, you start getting very directive. And you say, "You do this, no. Well, the people love to sing, and so they accepted me for who I was at the time. And the group grew to be 25, 30 people.
It was big.
Yeah. You were an organist at one time, accompanist, and so
Right.
was Danny.
Danny Mercado.
Danny Mercado. And Henrietta Lopez's son was helped out at one time. And, I'm surprised they never quit on me, because I was so demanding. It was terrible, I know, but I have changed. And at one point, we decided to make a tape. And so Henry helped put it together, and we did it in one afternoon, and, whether it was good or not, it came out, and we sold the tapes. And it was fun doing that. Yeah, it was a good fundraiser. And so eventually, and throughout my career and as being a church musician, I've worked in many different parishes and very many different capacities. And I have worked at, I was working on this afternoon. I have had choirs at St. Edward's in Corona. I had a choir for Holy Rosary, the cathedral. There was a choir in Holy Family in Hesperia, Our Lady of the Desert in Apple Valley, which is where I minister right now. And I've also worked in liturgy committees as such. So, and I've have attended many workshops and conventions sponsored by the National Association of Pastoral Musicians. So over the years, I guess I've developed a certain amount of knowledge in terms of what to do and what not to do. But I have also developed myself in terms of being able to lead a choir and also improve my skills as a pianist. And this is all God-given. It's not anything that I set out to do. I didn't say, well, this is what I want to do. I want to be involved in church. I want to do this and this. He touched his magic wand and said, "This is what you're going to do."
But you had a tremendous influence with your aunts and your dad, and you're going to private school, to Catholic school.
Well, maybe that had a lot to do with what I do now, but it's not anything that said, okay, I want to do it. I never told myself, this is what I want to do. I was always led in that direction. And the way I play piano now, it's not, it's a God-given gift. It's not anything that I actually sit down and say, okay, I'm going to play it this way. Because I do a lot of improvising,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not easy.
It's hard.
It's something that you build yourself into, and you will never hear me play the same piece a piece the same way. Never. I never play it the same way. I always get direction from somewhere, and I either do it this way or that way, or even with the choir that I'm working with. I may or may not help them with the melody of the thing, but they're so good that they will sing what's written, and I will play what I feel is in my heart. And so I don't know if you can understand that.
No, I
because-
can. I think you improvise very, very well, and you just shift gears when you need to shift gears, and you accommodate people that are helping you or working with you in providing the music that you need to provide at that point. So, yeah, you.
Well, you know, in your own experience in being a leader of the community, there are some things that you affect people in a certain way that you don't even realize yourself that you've done that. And so sometimes I feel that way myself.
Well, this is why I wanted to interview you about your dad. Because your dad, like I mentioned at the first part of this interview, that he was a tremendous influence to our South Colton community. And can you remember who some of his friends were?
Very little of it. I started writing some names down,
Uh-huh.
and the only reason I know this is because he was involved, my dad was involved in fundraising for the church, for the new church.
The new church was
Yes, in San
a
Salvador.
project of whom? The
Father Luque,
junior?
yes. He's the one that started the idea of building a new building
Uh-huh.
For San
On
Salvador.
the same location that we had the old church,
Yes,
on 7th and L Street?
L Street.
Okay.
And he did it without diocesan approval. He did it on his own. And before they knew it, before the diocese knew it, the church was already built.
Well, I think he had to, because do you remember the experiences that Father Valencia, when he had
Oh, yeah.
when they had raised the money
Hmm.
and the diocese took the money and used it
Exactly.
for other stuff? So
Yeah, that was the Diocese of San Diego.
right, Yeah.
Not San Diego.
yeah. My mom or grandmother said that La Catedral allá en San Diego tiene todo el dinero de South Colton.
Oh, yeah, and that was very true. And you know, when the bishop came from San Diego, I mean, he was treated like royalty.
Yes.
Absolutely, because Father Valencia, that was his bishop.
So your dad was instrumental in raising funds to build a new church?
He was part of the group,
Uh-huh.
of the committee that raised the funds. And he was so detailed in his record keeping that he put down the name of every person that donated money, whether it was just for whatever, or whether it was for vestments, or for windows, or for chairs, or for anything that was put into the church. And they donated, he kept detailed records of everything.
What year was this, Terry?
Um,
66 or something like that, Henry?
It was, it seems to me it was like, yeah, the late 60s, early 70s.
So it's in the
Maybe-
60s then?
Maybe it was finished
Yeah.
around.
You know, the only thing I don't, and I have the dates.
Uh-huh.
That's, because he dated everything.
So your dad was very detailed in who donated to build that new church?
Oh, everybody
Uh-huh.
in South Colton.
Did you keep the records?
Yes, I have the records.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
I'll be.
Oh,
Frank,
yes, I have
we better
I have
see if
all
we
the
can
records.
put those records in the museum, the Colton Museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have those records. I have the records of Dula's involvement in trying to, not resurrect, that's a bad word, clean up the Alamasa Cemetery, because she was involved in the original group that was created in order to do that. And I have those records. So, yeah, I have all that information.
We have to talk some more, Terry.
Well, it's been very enlightening for me. And I also have in my memory my dad's job at the Portland Cement Company, and he was fired from there.
Why?
I think you know. Do you
No, I
know?
don't know.
He was fired. There was an accident at the cement plant because they had these skinny little roads, and one of the trucks overturned and somebody was killed. It was a worker was killed. And at that time, my father was beginning to get involved in unionizing. And of course, the cement plant didn't appreciate that. So they essentially blamed him for the accident and fired him. But in those times, because people knew what was going on, they knew what caused it and who was at fault. And I honestly believe there was such fear in the life of those men working there. It was their livelihood, and they didn't want to lose it. So they didn't back him up, you know. And he told my mom about it, and my mother told me. And she did mention a couple of names, but, you know, that's not going to serve any purpose now. But in any case, I think at that point in time is when his life changed. And and it changed the family life as well. Up until that time, he was very much involved with the family. He used to take us visiting some of his friends. We used to visit the Alvarez quite often, the Castorenas, and other people. We used to go on picnics. It was a community type activity. But after that, he changed a lot.
Change in what way, Terry?
Well, I'm sure people have mentioned he was an alcoholic, and he started drinking quite a bit. And I'm sure there are stories that even I don't know about, other things that would happen. But he started putting his energies more and more into union activities.
Mm-hmm.
But also that involved having to meet a lot of people and going to different places. And I think things just got out of hand for him. And so whether he wanted to control it or not, I don't know. But anyway, it changed our home life.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, a lot of this stuff I'm just finding out. And it's helping me understand who I am, who the family is, who he was, what he did. He helped many, many people, even at home on the weekends. He would have people just coming by every hour, on the hour help. He would help people with immigration papers, taxes, letters of references to parole boards, everything. I mean, he was there for them, and he never took payment. Whatever he gave them as payment, I don't know, but I know that they helped him in a lot of ways. And he was that way when he worked for the union. The men at the union, he helped them with all the same kinds of things. And talking to my sister Clara, because she was there quite a bit, and she saw everything that was going on and what he did for them and what he did for the union.
But you mentioned that some of the union members didn't have money to pay for their monthly dues, and your dad would cover them.
Well, I think somebody probably said that, and I wouldn't be surprised. He instituted health benefits for the union, and I'm not sure about retirement, but they had a retirement. If he had any instrument in that, I don't know. He never took advantage of the retirement, but he did take advantage of the health benefits. And every time I called the union for something, they knew immediately they would help me. Not that I called often, but Clara used to go quite a bit. My sister Carol sometimes would go to the union hall, the one downtown, and also when they built the new one over there by the Orange Show. I was not a frequent visitor. I was probably too old,
Mm-hmm.
going to high school and stuff like that. And my brother wasn't involved at all either. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you remember some of his friends? Like, was he a friend of, you mentioned Pete Lukey.
Well, yeah, I took some of these names from the documents for the church. And they're names that I remember from even before, outside of that. And there was Pascual
Oliva,
yeah.
who was he, I think he was mayor of Colton.
Yes, he was, but not at the time
Uh-huh.
when I knew him. There was Milton Noriega.
Milton Noriega owned the
from
Sombrero,
the Sombrero.
the
yeah.
Sombrero restaurant.
There was Salvador Pimentel, who was our neighbor across the street. There was Salvador Robledo,
The box, the
boxing.
the boxer,
person.
yeah, the boxer.
And then,
Sabas
the
Obrero.
barbecue person too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, excellent meat. It was very tasty. Tony Hernandez.
Tony Hernandez, who Korean veteran.
There
Korean
was
veteran.
Jesus Zarate. Do you remember who he was?
Jesus?
Zarate.
No lo conozco.
Yeah, he was probably one of the younger men. There was Nacho Cabrera. He
Nacho
was,
Cabrera, World War II veteran, and he owned a barber shop
right next
on
to
7th
my
Street, 7th and O.
on N, originally on N,
Uh-huh.
and then he moved. There was Ray Abril, of course, and then
Was it junior or senior?
senior.
Senior, okay. The Boy Scout master.
Yes,
Mhm.
and then there was I can't remember. I wrote the name down, but I can't read it. Lena Mesa or something, someone like that. Yeah, and there was the owner of the Mexico Cafe. Her name was Nena, and he worked.
Negrete?
Negrete, yes. He worked with her. There was a law, and I forget. It was a law. Let's see. It was against liquor, and they were going to be limiting, I think, how much liquor could be served at bars and restaurants. And so they got together. There was a group of business owners from San Bernardino. They got together and they were going to form against this law. There was a jury law or something like that. Do you recall?
No,
Those-
I don't.
the land. Anyway, those are the names that came out when I was going through my paperwork.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So those were kind of members of organizations that he belonged to.
Well, yeah, he was very much involved in a youth or a young adult group called the ASET. You're going to have to bear with me.
No, take your time.
Oh, it was the dram shop liability law. Do you remember that law?
No, I don't.
Yeah, it was in 1977, and it was there was an organization created called the Food, Beverage, and Spirits Association, and then my dad helped build it because they were going to be. It was a political organization because the dram shop liability law had to do with limiting liquor, the selling of liquor. And so he was with that, and then. It was the ACJM, it was the Asociación Católica de Jóvenes Mexicana. And it was a group of young men, I think they were in their 20s and late 20s. They were involved in various church activities and they did fundraising. And it was about, I'd say about 10 or 12 young men. I have a picture of them, but I don't know the names of all of them. But if you showed it around, they would be able to name all of them.
Could we borrow it?
Yeah, I will.
I'll sign my name in blood.
Make a copy of it probably,
I
or
will-
scan it.
Yeah, I will bring. Well, my aunt Kuka, she liked to take a lot of pictures. I found an album, and the pictures are about like this small, but they're you can still tell who's in them.
And when you scan some of those small ones, they
Mhm.
enlarge very nicely.
Do they?
Yes.
I'm not really quite.
You can get them, quite big.
Oh, okay. I have a lot of pictures of the fiestas, the platform for the fiestas, some of the parade. Well, a lot of home pictures as well, but
Yeah.
a lot of the men or young men that would visit the house during the war.
Mhm.
My father and his brothers and sisters were orphaned at a very young age.
I didn't know that, Terry.
Yes, by the time when Kuka was born, their dad passed away just a few months after that.
Mhm.
So, and the mother had already died, so they were all alone, and so they used to have a lot of fun. But my grandmother, or my mom's mom, used to keep an eye on them because she
Mhm.
lived right next door. But they were always very welcoming of other young people that were having problems at home. They could stay with them, they would help them out. They were always, that was their way. They just did it, it was just who they were.
Mhm, mhm.
So, but I forgot where I was heading, so you're gonna have to remind me. Anyway, I get caught in these little, stories, side stories.
Yeah, I asked you about your dad's friends, and do you remember, last name was Ochoa, Raul Ochoa.
Mhm. Yes, I do.
He was also part of the Progresista group, and also helped your dad do many of the activities there in the community.
Probably, I don't remember. The name Progresistas sounds familiar to me. Did it have anything to do with Trabajadores Unidos?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
all right.
Mutual Aid Society.
Yes.
And they were part of the Congress of Community Clubs.
They must have been, but they weren't on the letterhead, so, I didn't, was it on the letterhead? Did I mention them?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
And tell us about you. You grew up in South Colton. You went to school where?
My brother and I were the first ones that went to St. Bernardine from the first grade. And talking about safety issues, we used to get on the bus on 8th Street. And it was the bus that came from LA, you know how the red bus that used to come. We would go by ourselves, unchaperoned, and we would end up on East Street on Assembly and walk through town to school. And we did it all alone. We were 6 and 7 years old at the time.
Wow.
And we never had chaperones. It wasn't necessary. But we went through high school, grade school and high school. And we were not, at least for myself, I was not part of growing up in South Colton, other than the Girl Scouts and the Fiestas Patrias. And so I didn't make any lasting friendships in South Colton. There was friends like in the Girl Scouts and things like that. But there was a certain distance between the other kids and myself. And I was very quiet anyway, so anything anybody said, I took it personally. But anyway, I wasn't an outgoing child.
And then you graduated
So,
from which high school?
Well, let me finish.
Uh-huh.
So I was kind of lonely in that respect, so I kept to myself. But what was your question?
Oh, high school graduation.
I graduated from St. Bernardine, and it was a good education. My brother graduated from that, and so did Carol and Clara. And when I graduated, I saw it as an opportunity to leave home, so I did. And I went to Los Angeles to live with my aunt. I worked there for about 5 years, and I got married. And then I even went to Japan for a year. But, came back and have lived in various places. But my work history, I worked in LA, and I worked in San Bernardino. It was just a normal existence until I started working for the church. And that's where I started, coming out of my shell, so to speak. Yeah.
Well, let me get back to your dad in South Colton and the young men that went to World War II. It's estimated that the number of young men that participated from Colton in World War II was about 400. For about three female, and the rest were male. And you mentioned the attitude that they came back feeling proud of who they were and serving their country. Mm-hmm. And did they develop any organizations that they belonged to, or that helped them with educational opportunities or buying houses, or
Not that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
What I do know is that probably around that time or a few years later, some families started buying homes in North Colton. It was primarily where the orange groves used to be,
Mm-hmm.
Rancho and in there. I do remember that. And it's funny how people are, míralos, ya se movieron para allá, you know, that kind of attitude.
I remember hearing that.
Yeah, so it was not an easy transition for those people that chose to move over there. I know some of your family, they moved out of the area, and I'm sure it wasn't easy for them to do that. You know, I don't know, but
It was again another, it was an opportunity, it was a change of attitude.
Oh,
It was
yes.
kind of, I can do it because I have a good job and I'm able to pay for a home in North Colton.
right. Yeah, you know, but some of those attitudes still exist today.
Uh-huh.
It's not easy. It's not easy to forget the hurts,
Uh-huh.
the things that people had experienced while
Mhm.
going to school. My father, I don't think he ever forgave, you know, that discrimination.
Mhm.
um,
Was it from discrimination from
in school
in school
and also in the community, you know,
and work?
and work. You know, my mom used to tell us that when they went to the New Colton Theater, there was a separation of seating even when they were growing up. So the hurt was deep seated for my dad. And he used to speak about it all the time. He when Cesar Chavez started his activism, you know, with the grapes and things like that. My dad was older, and I think when he was a few years before he passed, he would sit down and reflect on the fact that he couldn't help because he just wasn't able to physically get involved at that point in time. So I think he missed the activism and the fact that he was able to do what he did, but he no longer could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Terry, he put in his time, though. He really helped so many people. So.
He did. When Kennedy died, he also wrote a song, and he had it copyrighted, and I have the actual music that he wrote down. And
Did he sing
and
it
the
into
words.
a tape recorder or anything, maybe?
No, I don't think so. He sang it to me one time, but I
Mhm.
don't think he ever recorded it. If he did, I don't know. But it is copyrighted, and he's got all the all the verses that he wrote. I have that.
Is it in English?
It's in Spanish.
It's in Spanish.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd like to hear it someday.
Well, you can read it and hopefully put it together. You know, but he did that.
You know, I truly appreciate you being with us this afternoon. Is there anything else about you that we can talk about, or about your dad that we've forgotten to mention?
Well, there were so many sides to him, you know, that I don't know about, and that probably other people don't know about either. It was a hard life for him, and it was a hard life for the family. One of the things that I remember very vividly, because I'm the one that experienced it, if you can call it an experience. I must have been about maybe 12 years old, and it was Christmas, and we received a gift basket, you know, a food basket, because people knew that we weren't doing very well. But one evening, I think I was home alone, and I heard a knock at the door. So, I went to answer the door, and it was the owner of Miller Honey. Do you remember what his name was?
The what?
The owner of Miller Honey.
Oh, I can't remember. I can't.
He was a huge guy,
Uh-huh.
right?
Woodrow.
Was it Woodrow Miller?
Woodrow Miller, uh-huh.
And he said, "Is your dad home?" And I said, "No, he's not." He says, "Well, I have a little gift for him," and it was a box of his honey. So then he said, "Merry Christmas," and I said, "Thank you," and he left. And I, it not until later did I realize who it was and what was happening. So that kind of gave me an idea of his involvement, with the community. You try to put little snippets together here and there, and you come up with a caricature or whatever of a person. And so over the years, I've learned what he meant to the community and what he did for the community. And it's amazing, if I had heard this about anybody else, I would say, wow, he led a good life. But it's different knowing both sides of a person.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And in time, hopefully, I could come to appreciate both sides.
Well, you have a lot
He
to
was-
be proud. I'm sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
he liked to party, and we had a piano, and it's the piano that I learned how to play on, and he would play it often, quite often. And so I guess he and his friends got together one day over at Van Aken's house.
Oh, yes, yes.
Because they had a huge
Fred
yard.
Van Aken and, yes, Sarah. Uh-huh.
Yes, and so they must have been having a really good time, because all of a sudden he was at the house and they were packing the piano into the truck, and my mom is going, she's just shaking her head, and we're all looking at him and thinking, right, he's having one of his good days, right? So they had a good time with the piano, and then they brought it home. But what happened is that by the time they were getting it home, they had been partying all day long and into the evening, and the guy who was driving the truck took a turn too fast, and the piano ended up on the road. It was all gone. It was all gone. And my mom was so upset. I mean, he tried to make up for it. He bought a new one, but it was, it was never the same again. But, you have these experiences, and so.
Well, he was quite a person, as I mentioned before. And, he experienced many, many things and was never afraid of new experiences. Even the fact of going out on a limb and helping other people, and also with his union activism, which people were not too pleased with that. He suffered the consequences. And like you said, on weekends, and almost every day of the week, people would come to your house to ask for some help in one form or another. A group of boys, a club, Los Conquistadores and Los Solteros, they both have mentioned your dad, that when they were organizing, when they were in high school, that he was able to form their constitution and also attend many other meetings. And with him and Tony, I can't remember, Tony Martinez, I think, they would be the advisors to those clubs and would tell them how to run a meeting,
Mhm.
and how to take minutes, and how to help the community by doing volunteer activities. So again, with those people our age, Terry, they still remember your dad and his participation in their club. So I think as a community, we were very, very lucky to have your dad as one of the leaders of our community.
Mhm. Yeah, it's always been, I don't recall uh, people ever saying, recognizing that publicly for him. That's one thing that I know I never experienced, and I know it never happened.
Mhm.
So it was a hurt.
Mhm.
But I don't think that he ever wanted that.
Mhm.
I don't think that ever even entered his mind,
Mhm.
that he should be recognized. And so I think he was happy with what he did
Mhm.
and how he helped people. He
Mhm.
was proud of that,
Mhm.
and he could walk with us.
Mhm. I knew him because of my dad. They were good
Mhm.
friends. And again, when we started this project with Henry and Frank, I said, we have to interview and we have to get some more information about Manuel, your dad, because we don't have it. We don't have it. So, thank you very much.
Well,
Did
you're
we miss
welcome.
anything from your notes? You have a whole bunch of notes
I have a
here.
whole bunch of notes, and I'm sure I didn't go over everything, so, I'm going to give them to you.
Thank
So you
you.
can have them.
Can we also get together and maybe you can loan us your pictures and we'll scan them and also put them as part of the
Oh, yeah,
activity?
I had to go through everything,
Mhm.
and it was interesting that it was in order,
Mhm.
like everything that he did.
Mhm.
you know, so.
Henry,
Be happy
you
to
had-
share 'em.
You wanted to say something?
Oh, no, just I'm thankful that your family, I mean, your dad in particular, but your aunts and even the extended, your other aunts or the people that lived in East Highlands, I mean, they were well known. I have
Mhm.
friends who talk about, the help that they gave everywhere they were. So,
And they still do.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it's a
they do.
very,
Yeah.
you come from a very helping family, very beautiful heritage. And I think Colton in particular, but East Highlands and San Bernardino
Mhm.
are very lucky to
Mhm.
have had your family.
Thank you.
And now, Terry, you retired a few years ago.
Mhm.
How is it?
Well, retirement is it's different. I've been retired now, this is going my third year? And I just ended a long-term relationship, so I'm by myself, and I'm living in my home. And it's a 4-bedroom home, and I live there with my 3 dogs. And I'm very comfortable.
Uh-huh.
I've never lived alone, so I'm enjoying that part of it. I don't get up very early in the morning, only when my little children wake up early because they have to go out. But I'm enjoying. I have the 2 choirs. I have a choir at Our Lady of the Desert, and I have the choir in Colton. And I have, I continue my involvement in the church in Colton especially. And I'm satisfied and I'm happy with where I'm at right
Mhm,
now in my
mhm,
life.
mhm.
I'm enjoying the retirement aspect of it tremendously. I can, it's not that I can do whatever I want, it's just that I can choose to either do or not.
Mhm.
You know. It was hard at first because I didn't have a set schedule. I didn't have to work from 9 to 5. So I started thinking, I said, well, you know what, Terry, you have to get a life, you have to kind of find things to do. But I'm finding that things are coming to me. And I'm happy right now where I'm at.
So, and you're actually, enjoying what you do and
Yes.
enjoying your music,
Mhm.
and at the same time, being with your congregations that you help out,
Mhm.
and continue your relationship, especially with the folks in Colton.
That's been a very interesting, I guess, phenomena for me. I'm always getting asked, because I spend a lot of time in Colton. I go down sometimes 3 or 4 times a week in the evenings.
You live in Victorville, so
In
that's-
Apple Valley.
Apple Valley.
Yeah, Apple Valley, it's different. So it takes a good hour to get back and forth. And so people are always asking me, why don't you move back to Colton? So I've been thinking about that. And I go, in Colton I have memories that I don't want to remember. I have relationships that I had wanted to have and never could have. People know me. Sometimes they don't look at me favorably, sometimes they do. There's a lot of emotion, you know, and it's emotion that I'm facing, you know, now. But living in Apple Valley and Victorville, people know me for who I am. They don't know me because of my family. They know me because they know Terry.
Mm-hmm.
They know Terry's involved here. She has these relationships, and there's no old history there. And for me, right now in this part of my life, it's important for me
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to be able to have a group of people that I know that know me for who I am and not for who my family was. Not that that's a bad thing, because that's where I come from. I am who I am because of my family, my dad, my aunts, all my relatives on both sides. And that's a good thing, but I also enjoy maybe eventually I will move back to Colton.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But for now, it's like living 2 separate lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if you're comfortable.
Yeah. And I am comfortable, and I love driving. People think I'm crazy. So
That's a beautiful drive.
I was talking to
Yeah.
Lupe Arias
Uh-huh.
from the choir last night, because she was saying, Terry, I'm getting old, and I don't know how much I'm going to last. And because she has a beautiful voice, even at, you know, she's 80-some years old. And I was telling her, you know what, I probably will never quit until I can't push that gas pedal any longer. You know, because I like driving. I've taken some trips. You know, I've done some traveling. Well, you know, I've been to Italy. I just came back from Italy. I've been to Japan. I've been to China. I've been down South America through the canal. What do you call it?
Panama.
Panama Canal. I even went ziplining in Costa Rica. Do you know what ziplining is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very exciting.
You're brave.
I always thought I thought I would die, but it was also enjoyable at the same time. And people thought I was crazy, but you know, this is one of my bucket list things. And I also went to Tikal, which is one of the oldest Mayan, most important discoveries that they've made. So I'm getting to do a lot of the things that I had dreamed of doing. And my retirement is good, you know, as well as I do that the retirement from Cal State is a good one. So I plan on doing some more traveling. I'm just wondering who I can take with me, because you know, not everybody can do the travel. So.
I know.
But I went to Italy with a group of choir directors, and it was very, very inspiring. I saw the Pope not more than 10 feet away from me. That was quite an experience. And, seeing the Great Wall of China was awesome. So I'm getting things done.
Well, I'm delighted that you're enjoying your retirement,
Yeah, I
and
am.
it's working out well for you.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're comfortable, you have flexible time, so things are working well for you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. It's good.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for sharing your family's life history with us. Truly appreciate it. Especially, like, I'm repeating myself again, because I did want you to talk about your dad
Mhm.
and his contributions to our community of South Colton. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for asking me, Tom.
Yeah. And Henry, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
also.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank you.